Have our kind of final piece of the puzzle, which is this feature modal, and we're going to try to see if we can make it responsive. So first I'm going to kind of try to check out what our issues are. So I'm going to go to the responsive page and kind of take a look. So I think I need to add a user story. User story 1. I am going to go get some fake text. So we can go ahead and add some to our description because I want to test. All right. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. Let's add a task. Let's do task 1, create. Let's add a task, task 2, create. All right. I think so far, so good. I think we're having the same issue here, and I'm assuming that we'll have the same issue here. Yeah, with the text input versus text area. So I'm going to go ahead and copy. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to go to my feature modal. Start there. And I'm going to go to my user story details accordion. And I'm going to change, that's user story name, and user story description. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to text area. I'm going to get rid of the height 40. I'm going to get rid of the type text. And that way, when I click edit, I have this then, which allows me to see the whole thing and scroll. So that's good. I'm also then going to, in terms of the icon, I'm going to try to remove this line item 7 center because I think that looks better. Yeah, so now I can scroll and edit from there. All right, I also am going to go back, and I think for my feature modal description, I'm going to click edit. I'm going to find a different few sentences to add, but this is a good way to do testing. You don't want to just always do like the shortest piece of text, because you want to kind of find a way to replicate how a user will do something. And so this, I wouldn't have thought that my input box was an issue until I'm trying to add more text to it. And now I do see it's an issue. All right, so now that I'm on my feature modal, I need to find where I'm adding my description, which is here. And so then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this a text area instead. I'm going to get rid of the height of 40. I'm going to get rid of the type text. And I'm going to get rid of the align item center. So that goes up. And then I'm going to be able to click. I'm going to be able to change it. And then I'm going to be able to save it. All right, so that looks pretty good. So at 650, I'm pretty pleased. Yeah, okay. So now let's figure out if I'm pleased as we get smaller. Okay, so still, now let's check here. Still mostly pleased. Let's open this up. Yeah, I don't feel too bad. I think maybe we could wrap the task so it's like task, I think maybe task on bottom. So let's go to task box and we can take a look at that. So we have this box and then we have all of our buttons and they are all in flex. So that will make it a little bit more difficult. Let me just see how bad, if at all, it looks by wrapping all of this in a box. Okay, so it did mess up things a little bit. Let's see what the gap was up here. So let's just take it. Okay, and then we're gonna say display, it's gonna be flex here, and then let's put gap 4. Okay, that puts it back. That's pretty good. All right, so here, I don't even know if we need justify content space in between anymore, because that's flex 1. I'm gonna pull this out so that way I can make sure. Okay, so that looks good. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to figure out where the task starts to look bad. And there's a lot of ways that we can do this, because another thing we didn't account for is we don't know how much text is going to get added to this in terms, because I've just been doing task 1. Excuse me. So I think I'm going to say, first I'm going to say margin right 4, because I don't like that that's lining up exactly. All right, that's not going to work how I wanted it to. So let's do margin right 4. All right, now that lines up how I wanted it to. Okay, so let's go ahead and just grab like a sentence. Let's grab these 2 sentences from here and put it in. And I forgot that that doesn't work. That's one of the bugs that we identified. All right, so that honestly looks fine because it just is gonna wrap it. So I don't mind that, but I don't think I need it to align center then, because I can leave those up there. But as it gets smaller, then we want to find a spot where we can move this up to give this more room. Okay, so now I'm going to check out just in general what flex direction column would look like. All right, and I am going to actually edit this where I'm going to move this down. So typically you could use the ordering unless you always want it to look like this. And I don't love that. I was going to say maybe we could just have it always on top, but I don't think that's how I want it. Okay, so what I want to do is add my media query. Chakra UI media query. And let's go take a look. And in here, we're going to grab this and add it. Let's go ahead and import our media query. And let's take a look at what size we are at in terms of screen size. So 10,050. So let's get rid of this flex direction column because that's not what we want. All right, so that to me still looks fine. I feel like, let's say 920 is when it starts to get a little bit to be an issue. So let's do 920. I also would recommend too that if you are building an application slowly, that you can do this styling and you can do the responsive as you're adding it in. I kind of like to focus as I'm going on like one thing at a time. So that's kind of why I don't hop around and I just make it work and then I make it pretty. But if you like to make it pretty as you go, you can do all of this while you're coding the section. You don't have to wait. Okay. So now we're going to say flex direction. And we're going to say is larger than 920. Then we're going to have it be a row. Otherwise, we're going to have it be a column. Okay, so now if I shrink down, that moves down to the bottom. Okay, So I think what I still do want it to have a gap. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove that margin that I just added. Where I added it here is bad because I actually do want to have a gap between those items. Okay? That looks good like that. Now I'm going to try to center it and I'm going to see if I like it on bottom. So I'm going to first add a border around it. I like to add a border whenever I'm trying to center things so I can see what I'm working with. And then I'm going to say justify content. I'm going to start with justify content center, and that looks like that works as I intended it, and then I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so then I need to decide, do I want this on bottom or do I want this on top? So I'm going to try it both ways. So I'm going to say order 1. And then I'm going to say order 2. All right. And then I ask myself, do I like it with the to do on top, or do I want it with the buttons on top, or do I want it on the buttons on bottom? And honestly, I kind of like it with the buttons on top, so I think I'm going to leave it as is, okay? But I only want that to be if we're larger than 920, then I will leave this as 1, otherwise I want it 2. And then same with here, if larger than 920, I'll have it as 1, otherwise I'll have it as 2, otherwise I have it as 1. Okay? But that looks good now, kind of regardless of size. So let's go ahead and let's now shrink this down to an iPhone. And that's looking pretty good. You can see now that we're gonna have an issue with our user story name, and we're gonna have to do something similar with that. But I'm actually pretty pleased with how my tasks look. I'm pleased with how my add user story looks. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's grab another random piece of text for our user story. Actually, let's add a larger piece of text. Let's do edit. Yeah, and see, we'll probably need to make this a text area at some point. I'm gonna not worry about it until I get into testing. But you can see that we'll have similar issues with this. So now if I make it unresponsive and I look, see, like, it looks good as we're out farther. Let's go and look at it 920. Yeah, I think that still looks fine as is, right? But I think it starts to be a problem when it gets too small. So we're gonna have to replicate what we just did with the task. Now we have to replicate that and make that how we want the user story name to work as well. All right. So where are we going? Okay, so we want to go back to user story details, and we are looking at the user story name. Right. All right, so we got name, which is going to be this. All right. I'm trying to, because this is definitely in the middle. It is display flex. All right. So let's go to task box and let's get the same media query. Let's go up and paste it and then import the media query. And then here we're going to say flex direction is larger than 920, and we'll have it be a row. Otherwise, we'll have it be a column. Okay? So we're bigger than 920, so it's still in a row. Let's go smaller than 920. And now it goes into a column, and you can see we have an issue with this. So that means that we need to wrap this in a box and hope it doesn't mess everything up. Accordion icon. All right, it looks like status. So then we want to do display flex to get it all in a row. And then we want to do justify content. Nope. We want to do align items center. All right, that looks good. And we are going to want to do what I'm looking for now is I actually am going to try column reverse instead of using order, and that does work out as I intended, which is lovely. So then let's add a gap of 4 between those two, which is good. And then we don't need to add a margin right of 4, and I don't want to add a margin right of 4, and I don't want to margin right of 4. Because I can just add here a gap of 4. I like using gap instead of margin. That's just me personally. And so I think then, can I do justify content flex end? No. Margin right 0. All right, I was gonna try to get it to align to the right, but I'm not sure I necessarily need to do that. Let's see how it looks as it gets smaller. So as it gets bigger, that still looks good. As it gets smaller, yeah, that still looks good. All right, so now let's look on it on the smallest phone, which is the Galaxy Fold. And it does look a little bit wonky. Oops, I don't want to delete that. See, I'm a little, I don't think it works very well because when I click on this icon, it thought I was clicking on the, so I wouldn't recommend using it on your Galaxy straight up and down, but I think in terms of how it looks, I feel pretty okay about it. All right, so that is going to conclude our responsive design and our styling, okay? There's still bugs, there's still things to work out, but that is where we are going to get into testing next week. So I'm going to start out with manual testing, and I'm actually going to try to use my tool, and I'm going to record all of the bugs as I'm using the tool and trying out different areas, and then I'm going to fix them. All right, then the following week, I will try to add some automated testing into my API. So that way you can see as you change things, you can run those tests and make sure everything is in working order. And that will conclude the to-do list workshop. All right, I will see you when it's time to start manually testing.